Yvette Henson. I work for Colorado State University Extension in the San Miguel Basin, which is southwestern Colorado. Today I'm going to talk to you about how to grow tomatoes in buckets. This is the way that I've grown tomatoes probably the last 16 or 17 years. So I really like this method. The first thing you need is a bucket. The kind that I like to get are these 5-gallon buckets that you get at big box stores or hardware stores, and they're relatively inexpensive. You can also use recycled buckets as long as you clean them really well, where they're sterilized and there's nothing toxic left in them. The first thing you want to do is drill holes in the bottom of your bucket, 5 or 6 holes. If you don't have a drill, you can use just a big nail and a hammer. You put the holes so that the bucket will drain, and then you just need a good all-purpose potting soil. And when you're starting fresh with a bucket, you can fill it partially, plant your tomato and fill it in. But I recycle my tomato buckets, and every few years I'll sterilize my soil or clean out my soil. So I'm gonna just be showing you how to do it starting in soil that's already filled up. So you get your little tomato plant that you either grew yourself or you bought at the garden center, and you remove it from its container. You want to loosen up any roots that have root bound with your fingernail or a knife, and that loosens them up so that they can grow out into the soil in the bucket instead of around and around in this little piece of soil. The next thing we're going to do before we plant is we're going to remove some of these bottom leaves. A tomato stem will form roots all along the stem as long as it's buried under the soil. And we want to do that because it stabilizes the plant, it develops more roots so that it can get more nutrients. So you remove the bottom branches up until the point that you want to plant it. And I think I'm even going to remove this one right here. Don't want to hurt it. And then I dig my hole. I've got a trowel, but I use my hands. So you dig your hole deep, and then you put the tomato down in the middle of that bucket, and then you fill it in with soil. Then the next thing you want to do is water it in. You may need to add a little bit more soil because you want as much of the stem to be buried as possible. Sometimes when you plant a tomato, it'll have little tiny flower blooms on it. When you first plant it, it will help it establish if you will actually remove those blooms. You want it to develop roots and put its nutrients into developing roots and growing the plant structure before you start setting fruit. The next thing you want to do is you want to support your tomato. This is an indeterminate tomato, which means that it grows continuously until frost. So it's like a vine. And then there are also tomato varieties that are determinate, which means they're a bush. They stop growing at 3 to 4 feet, and then they produce and ripen all their fruit. But an indeterminate will keep going. So I like these cages. You could use stakes and twine, or you could use, like I make these with recycled fence wire, and I just had some left over, and you measure it so that you have the right diameter to fit over your bucket. And then on one side of the wire, you want to leave some of the wire sticking out like this. And then on the other side, you want it to be flush. And then you can use those parts that you leave sticking out. That's really important so that you can wrap it around and make the cage into a circle. So some things for maintaining your tomato: you want to fertilize it. When you first plant it, you can use a liquid fertilizer or a granular fertilizer that's not too high in nitrogen, but just enough to get it started. So something like 5-5-5 or something close to that. And then as it grows and when it starts to set flower buds, you don't want to fertilize with very much nitrogen anymore, because when you over fertilize with nitrogen, you get too much leaf growth and not enough fruit set. And you also get mealy tomatoes that don't have very much flavor. So once they set their flower buds, what I do is I use a liquid concentrated Cal Mag, which is calcium and magnesium, and about every other watering or so, I mix that up and I water my tomato. And the Cal Mag will keep your tomatoes from getting blossom end rot. You also want to water regularly, and that will help prevent blossom end rot as well. When you're taking care of your tomato as it grows up through the cage, you want to prune it occasionally. So there's two types of pruning I'm going to talk about. Tomatoes along the main stem and the places where the leaves meet the stem, other little branches form. So in order to be able to manage your plant and see your fruit and put energy into that and not have a huge plant, you want to prune those off. You just pinch them out. And they'll continue to form as your plant grows, but that will keep it more manageable and you can see your fruit better. Another way that you can prune a tomato in a bucket is your tomato will grow when it's indeterminate up above. It'll reach quite a few feet up above this cage, and you can prune that off. You can cut that off late summer, early fall, mid-fall, and when you cut that off, it's not growing anymore, and so it puts energy into ripening the remaining fruit that you have on your vine. I hope this video was helpful to you to learn how to grow tomatoes in buckets.